So here I am at Penn's Creek. It's the 25th of April 2023, and I'm here fishing with a friend of mine to the Hendrickson, Granum caddis, apple caddis, March browns, crane flies, everything you can imagine is coming off today. It's a Tuesday. And important thing about this trip is it marks my 50th anniversary of fishing Penn's Creek. I came here first in April of 1973, and I came here with my dad. We'd traveled here from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, over the mountains. That's where my grandparents lived. And we came here to explore and get to know the stream. I was 12, going on 13, and came over the mountain, came down along Cherry Run, and got out of the car, and I ran down to Penn's Creek through the rhododendrons and stumbling, got to the banks, ran down to the pool below there, and stood there as flies came off, and this giant brown trout jumped in front of me, grabbed the fly in midair, and like 15 feet right in front of me off the bank. And at that instant I was hooked on Penn's Creek, and everything I'd heard about it from when I was a kid, reading books and hearing stories, were true. And so I ended up begging my dad to come back. We came back in the summer, and that summer we started fishing Penn's Creek. We pretty much fished every season from then on. By the time I was in my late teens, I was becoming a pretty good fly fisherman, and nailed it in 1979 when I caught 30 brown trout on blue-wing olives on 4th of July. And I haven't missed a season yet. So this marks kind of neat anniversary. I've been here for 50 years at the stream, and I plan to, maybe I'll get another 30 years, maybe 25. I'm 62 right now and going on 63, and I just got 2 titanium stents stuck in my heart after nearly getting a heart attack in January. But I'm feeling good, and I'm planning on continuing to fish, and I always want you to come back. The stream really wants you to come back. It really never disappoints, especially this time of year. It's a tremendous fishery, beautiful area, special on earth. And I'm, again, forever grateful for the opportunity to fish here and come back here every year. And I think it has enriched my life, and it's a great place. That's all I can say. So that's it. Here at Penn's Creek, and with my friend Ingleby, and it's I think it's the 23rd, 24th actually of April. We've had a cool down. It's probably 48 right now. Wind's blowing northwest. It's about 4:45, and apparently there's some March browns and some Hendricksons on the water. I don't even see any caddises right now. It's probably too cold for them. They're in the bushes. bushes. But there's some trout rising. So I think it's going to be a good evening, despite the cold. I'll show you situation on Penn's Creek. Wind's kind of blowing to this side of the river, and there are blue quills and very dark Hendersons, caddises, crane flies, just a mess of stuff on this. I haven't seen a March brown yet. I had one on and I almost landed it virtually, like a 15-inch fish. But right on the bank here, there's 2 or 3 nice fish rising to these, very leisurely to all these flies here. You can kind of see that, these flies, just amazing. This is a good situation. But you got to be very careful when they approach here. And often it's good to cast downstream like this, so you don't cast over the fish. Beautiful. Just got a one of these bank zippers I was just talking about. He came up to the Henderson emerger. Yep. And he is, what is he anyway? Is this a fault fish or is this a trout? Come on. That's a trout. Nice fish. Anyway, these guys are right along the bank here, taking just scads of flies that are coming down and getting pushed onto this side here. So I'll land this guy. I'll show him to you. It's lightly spotted, maybe about 14. Beautiful fish. Very different from the river browns. That's what I call the heavily spotted fish. I'm going to take them off here and let them go and go for the next one. Took a Henderson no refusal emerger right there. A male March brown sitting on a rock here at Penn's Creek. And right here is a big fat old female. I think it's the 24th of April. This is really the beginning of the March brown. They are pretty good right through, almost through the end of May. So they're one of the longer duration hatches. And some of these early guys are pretty big. The duns. I doubt there's spinners out yet, unless it really gets hot. It's going to be cool for a while. But some of these early duns are very attractive to the trout. I got one on a March brown. We're also getting them on Hendersons. And there's lots of caddis around. So these early March browns are truly big flies, especially the females. So you want to size up to a size 10 if necessary. This is a Parachute Adams. It's high riding, goes very well in the heavy pocket water. These are really good meals for a trout, and the trout really key in on them. And also the fact that the duration of the hatch is so long makes these a really important fly to have in your fly box in the early season. So this first day of our fishing trip to Penn's Creek started reasonably well. And we really only fished for a few hours in the evening. We got 4 apiece. They're all good sized fish, and there were plenty of flies on the water. So it was a good sign for the coming days. And one thing I can say about this particular week, last week it hit 85 for a couple days in a row, and that was like maybe the 3rd or even 4th time that the temperatures in April had gone up to the upper 70s or low 80s. And I think what this did was to jumpstart the April hatches. So the hatches were well underway when we started this trip. and the water levels are pretty low comparatively to other years. Usually the water levels are around 500-600 CFS, and I think we're about 200, something like that, 250 at the most. And that's good and bad. It's bad for the summer, but it's good for this time of year when you're trying to get into places on the stream where you can't get into when the water's high. So there's some opportunities there that we took advantage of. So with the flies coming off and the fish keyed in on the flies very early, then the weather cooled down, went from the 80s to the 40s and at the most low 50s for about 4 days. A lot of flies were on the water. The trout were keyed in and looking up. Lots of opportunities. And one thing I can say about the April hatches is you can fish during the middle of the day and the sun's shining and the fish are rising. That's a kind of a neat situation because later in May, a lot of times you might not see anything until 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening, especially towards the end of May, when the fish really start coming up, especially on those bright days. So this is a good situation where it was cloudy, cool, overcast, water levels were in good shape, lots of flies in the water. Fish were keyed in on a variety of flies, and not many people up there for the midweek period when the weather was bad. And so good situation, we had a good time, and I'll talk about the subsequent days here and give you an idea of what we experienced. So the second day of the trip turned out to be partly sunny, a bit warmer. Temperatures went up into the upper 50s. And we decided to fish down at the lower end of the catch and release area towards Cherry Run. Hadn't been there a few years and wanted to do a little bit of exploring, just a couple of the sections I hadn't fished for quite a long time. Got there's a few guys there already, and the water was looking in good shape, and we got in there and with the sun shining and quickly got into some trout, starting as soon as we got there in the 2:30 to 3 o'clock time frame. The trout were rising. A lot of fly activity, a lot of rising trout, and some interesting observations about where these trout are this time of year. Some of the sections that we fished were moderate riffles, a place where you probably wouldn't find them in the midsummer, but they were there and positioned and rising, and we got into some really nice sized brown trout. So I'll talk a little bit more about this second day of my 50th anniversary fly fishing trip to Penn's Creek. It's like 15, I think. Nice fish. I took the caddis. Oh, that's a nice fish right there. Beautiful. See you, guy. Nice brown, about 14. Took the no refusal. Henderson. Good fish. So this afternoon turned out to be pretty good, actually. We saw Hendersons, March Browns, apple caddis, Granum caddis, crane flies, and a few other species. And the hatches lasted most of the afternoon, from the time we got there until when we left, about 8 o'clock. And we got into a lot of nice browns. I caught 9 trout, 8 wild browns, and 1 wild brookie. All the browns that I landed were between 13 and 16 inches, which the average being about 15. The brookie was about 10 inches. I think I got 1 on the March Brown, 2 on the Hendrickson, no refusal, and the rest on caddis. Caddis pretty much ruled the day. Fish are rising all throughout the day, never really stopped. And my buddy landed 10 fish as well, which included 1 fall fish and 2 smallmouth bass, and the rest were trout, and all in the 15-inch range, and most on March Browns and CDC caddis. So one thing I can say about this section down here, there were no small fish coming up, at least in the areas we were fishing. And it kind of maybe validates a theory I have that a lot of the smaller browns are in the mid to upper reaches of Penn's Creek, where it stays cool in the summertime. And more of a nursery area gets more in the like 9 to 10 to 11 to 12 inch range. And down here, you probably have larger fish. And another theory I want to put out there is that once you get past like September 15th, the trout don't care where they are. They can be all the way down to the Susquehanna for that matter, and they'll use the entire river. That's an interesting possibility, and I'm sure there's guys out there that fish all up and down Penn's Creek in the different sections. And this time of year when it's cool, those trout are pretty much using the river the way they want to. And I'm sure they drop down and take advantage of food sources and the pools, and maybe eventually moving upstream or into the riffled areas with higher oxygen. But I was pretty impressed by the size and the quality of fish down in this end. And we'll certainly come back soon. It's been a while since I fished down here, and was fairly impressed with the trout population. I know some new regulations have gone into effect recently that extend the area they don't stock or they have as a wild brown trout fishery has been extended by something like 8 miles or something like that. So there's a lot more opportunity for this type of fishery to propagate. Certainly better than when I was a kid. It wasn't nearly as good as this. There was a lot more stocking, but a lot less wild trout. So pretty cool stuff, and we enjoyed the day. And I'll talk about our third day, which was equally good and a little bit different. So on the third day, we fished sections of Penn's Creek around Ingleby, and this section tends to have moderate riffles, moderate-sized pools, a few big pools, but the structure really is affected by the geology up there, which is primarily underlain by the Reedsville Shale. I had another video where I talked about that and how it affects the stream structure. That being said, it still has a tremendous population of wild brown trout. It's closer to the source of the springs that feed cold water to Penn's Creek, and in its own right is a tremendous fishery. So we went up into that area, which we do, and fished from about, I'd say, 2:30 or so until about 8 o'clock in the evening. A similar time period we did the day before that. And we had a bit of a slow start, but it picked up considerably. And one thing I can say is I did pretty well in the pocket water that's there, and I want to talk a little bit about that. In addition, some of the larger pools were productive, especially toward the end of the day when some spinner falls were happening, primarily Hendrickson spinners. So talk a little bit about the third day in the vicinity of Ingleby.
This big old brown out of pocket water, like on a March Brown in. Nice big old brown just came out of this pocket. March Brown nymph, fishing a dry and a nymph together. a shitload of spinners coming down here. So I just want to talk a little bit about the water I just fished here at Penn's Creek. I just got 4 out of this section in pretty quick succession. I was using a March Brown Dun and a 14 apple caddis, and just working in tandem and just working across the water here, hitting each one of these slots in the front here and then up there, and eventually making over to that nice run with an undercut bank at the base of that willow there. And I got one that was 10 here, another that was 10 there, and then over there I just hooked about a 15-inch wild brown, and I just got a 12-inch wild brown there. In that run there's a few others feeding. I had rises there too, but in this approach I'm just kind of working across the pool and keeping my cast short, my rod up high so it doesn't drag, just drifting the flies in the seams between the currents, and then eventually making it over to that really nice run in the deep undercut there, and there's trout laying in there over here. I'll just focus in on that. Mostly sight fishing, so I saw 1 or 2 rise, but I was just fishing the water, and these guys on this day in late April are coming up and whacking the caddis. Very exciting fishing. So another 15-inch brown, took a caddis right here. Beautiful fish. And we're gonna let this guy go. All right, dude, get back to your lair. Nice. Nice big old brown over there on the opposite bank. 2 of them. Not sure if they're taking spinners or not. There's spinners on the water. There's caddis. There's March Browns. Hendrickson Duns. There's another one up there. Goodness. Very different from water I just fished, that's for sure. I'm just moving into position here. There's a little break here behind this rock, and it's giving me a little bit of cover in terms of ripples. There's probably 4 or 5 in that spot over there. Just saw one come up. Saw a big nose come up, so it's probably a big fish. And there's one down here just below me. I think I just came up again. Let's give it a shot. Got one of them. Not the biggest one though. Still rising over there. This guy's a smaller fish. Get him in and try the other ones. Not a bad little trout. See the caddis in his corner of his jaw there. And there's still fish feeding here. I'll let him go now.
So we finished out the day at a pool upstream from Ingleby and got into a very nice spinner fall of Hendricksons. Numerous trout were feeding, and we pretty much rounded the day out there and probably hooked between 4 and 5 additional trout apiece. Just a nice ending to a good day. And I can say that the day was variable, just like the water is up in that area. But we're able to take advantage of different conditions: flat pools, pocket water, runs, and then some of the deeper pools toward the end of the day where we got into these spinners. And just by varying our techniques, we're able to catch a good number of trout. I think I caught 13 wild browns, and my buddy caught probably 7 or 8 wild browns during the afternoon that we fished in that area. So it's just a reminder that during this time of year, there's a multiple number of hatches that are coming off, and just to be prepared and to change some tactics. You know, I was in pocket water, pulling out big browns with nymphs and throwing in March brown duns and trout coming out of the deeper pockets in some nice runs, throwing caddises out there, and just having some thrilling fishing, just really good. The mix of trout were much broader, as is common in that area up there. There's a lot of smaller fish, mid-range fish, and a few larger fish. Just something you would expect when you're fishing toward the headwaters, where the population is much more diverse. So that ends the 3rd day of fishing on my 50th anniversary fishing Penn's Creek. We had one more day, did a little bit of fishing, and I'll talk about that in a minute.
So this is a section of Penn's that I've kind of largely ignored. I fished up here some, but it's the section above Coburn. And there's a section here that appears to be open, not posted. It's kind of a meandering meadow section with some pretty good structure, considering the fact that we're in the valley. Some of the sections further down are real straight and flat, and there's not a lot to it. And there's some dams down there that just make big lakes, basically. But this section is very interesting. Wasn't planning on fishing, because I have a conference call in about 2.5 hours. But I'm gonna give this a shot and fish up through this section. There's a god-awful deep pool right here. This thing is just monstrously deep. Let's see what I get. Beautiful day. It's the 27th of April. It's probably about 60 degrees right now. Sun shining. See what happens. So this section of Penn's, which is above Coburn, below Spring Mills, is managed as a stocked and Class A wild brown trout fishery. And I don't know if this section was open in the past. And it might be been set aside because there's a farmland preservation trust sign up there near the parking area. But it's a meadowy stream with undercut banks and nice little riffles and some neat pools in this section. I don't see any fish rising right now. I'm sure they stock in here, but I'm gonna give it a shot. Fish dries and nymphs. I got about 2 hours before my conference call, so see what I can do. Just a gorgeous day to try a new section of the upper part of Penn's Creek. My first trout on this section of Penn's today. Looks like a wild brown, and I think he came after the caddis. A caddis and a March brown nymph. Nice. He looks like he's about 12. Good fish. Nice fat meadow brown. Penn's Creek. So I'm back where I parked the car, and I'm looking at a big pool, incredibly deep pool. This
holds tremendous potential. I've never fished this pool before. It looks bottomless up there towards the top. There's a nice riffle going into it. And then if you look way up there, there's another series of riffles coming in. Most of this water comes from Sinking Creek, which comes out of the Seven Mountains, and then might pick up some limestone, and then Penn's Cave. So this is Penn's Cave water primarily when it comes to limestone. But the ability of the stream to cut into the banks, and maybe some of the floods gouging out some of these deep holes, this is a place I definitely want to return. Today is a sunny day. It's super bright, even though it's middle of April. I've took two 12 to 10-inch trout, wild browns. Haven't hooked any stock trout. This is supposed to be stocked in here, but I have another hour before I have a conference call I have to get on. I'm going to try to get through this section here and then go up to that riffle section and see what it looks like. Kind of neat that it's actually open now. I don't think it was open a few years ago. I wasn't aware of it anyway. I have to see what the history is. Exciting opportunities for meadow stream fishing on Penn's Creek. Very neat. So here's something I didn't expect. Down here in the valley, there's some real bedrock structure here. You can see the ledge down here. It's hard to see through that water. I have glasses on, I can see it, but there's a ledge of exposed in-place bedrock right there. And the stream is coming down in a nice pocket water section, very full. Cave is giving a lot of water right now, obviously, spilling into the top of this big pool. This is a very heavily fished pool. I can tell it's a swimming hole and everything else, but I didn't quite expect the structure here. And it almost looks like the grass is laying down. It hasn't rained in quite a long time, unless there's some kind of delayed response. This is offering some interesting fishing opportunities. Nice structure. And these two pools, the one I just showed before and this one, are almost too deep to fish. Unless you have really big flies and you are nymphing at the bottom. So I'm going to try in this water here, see if I can get interested. And then I'm going to work up into that pocket water, which goes up a little ways. And I got another 45 minutes before my call. So we'll see if I can get anything here. But definitely a return trip is in order. Would love to come here in the fall when nobody else is fishing. See what we can get. So take a look at this cool structure. So each one of those sort of ridges of rock represent a bed for a more resistant member of the limestone down here. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 6 of these. And there's pockets between those. So it's kind of going at an angle. Interesting hydrodynamics here for sure. Certainly pumping a lot of oxygen into the water below. Neat opportunity. It's the middle of the day. I'm not sure I'll get anything, but at least it's really neat to look at. It's beautiful. So those are the highlights of my recent trip to Penn's Creek. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found something in there that was of value to you. All in all, this was as good a trip to Penn's Creek as I've had. We came prepared, the weather cooperated, and Penn's Creek and the trout did not disappoint. My buddy and I fished over multiple hatches. We landed 57 wild trout between us. But this trip was very different in several ways as well. First, I was able to mark 50 years of fly fishing this wonderful stream. That is, in itself, a milestone and a blessing.
But this milestone almost never happened, because 3 months ago I was nearly blinked out of existence, never again to walk the banks of Penn's Creek. But thankfully, and perhaps by the grace of God, I was given a second chance. I was saved by the quick action of an amazing medical team at Penn Medicine's cardiac care unit. The experience left me shaken, tired, and nearly broken. But now, here I was, back on my favorite trout stream, recovering, getting stronger, enjoying the times, and looking forward to a brighter future. After these rough times, each swing of the rod and line, the tug of the current, each drift, each fish, and the sights and sounds of the new earth felt like gifts. When I was a young boy, one hot summer day, I found myself pacing the fields near my home in search of artifacts from the prehistoric past. The earth was steaming with the sweet smells of soil and salt marsh mixed in with the rotting potatoes. I stood in the baking sun as sweat beaded on my forehead. When I looked towards the ground, the sweat traveled down to the end of my nose and dripped onto my mud-caked boots. Along with the pebbles and rotten potatoes, I could see small pieces of broken flint, chert, jasper, quartz, and rhyolite. A sharp edge of jet black flint sliced through the dirt and caught my eye as I scanned the ground. I stopped and watched the spot for a while before going there. I reached down and carefully lifted out a finely crafted spear point. The point looked perhaps every bit as new as it was on the day it was lost. I turned the object over in my hands and studied it. Abandoned long ago, the spear point lay hidden in the understory and was eventually swallowed up by layers of the earth, like pages in a book. Now, 8,000 years later, it was in my hands. Under the hot summer sun, I read its story. About this time, a man appeared on the road, far away in the distance. I watched him warily through the shimmering mirages that were dancing over the hot pavement. He was moving slowly, but steadily in my direction, and it was only a matter of time before he would reach me. I was alone and several miles from home, having ridden my bike over the lonely country roads. I knew I was taking chances. The land, although not posted, was private, and the owner was unknown to me. I had been run off a field once before. But as the man got closer, I started to relax. As the road traveler came into focus, I noticed he was thin, frail really, and slightly bent over. His walk was a shuffle, perhaps on account of a bad back, bad hips, bad knees, or all of the above. His clothes were old and tattered as he was, a true ancient of perhaps 90 years or more. The noon sun blazed down on his dark brown, wrinkled forehead and close-cropped gray hair. His dark eyes were dimly covered with a milky haze. I surmised this man walked because he had to. I guess he lived alone in one of the small tenant houses that dotted the county, reminders of times when injustice and inopportunity for some ruled these lands. He stopped and turned towards me, and I towards him. I greeted him. I had no water to offer him. He spoke to me in a wavering but surprisingly strong voice. "You are a seeker," he said emphatically. "You will find what you are looking for." Dumbfounded, all I could muster up was, "Thank you." He slowly turned and gazed back up the road in the direction he was going and continued on his way. I watched him as he slowly vanished into the wavery mirages at the horizon. I took stock in what had just happened and placed the spear point and a bit of wisdom into my pocket, hopped on my bike, and rode home. I was a seeker. I had found what I was looking for. Over a lifetime, some people tell you who you are, or perhaps who they think you are. Others, however, such as the old man on the road, take your breath away in an entirely different way. Through some intuition or supernatural power that reveal who you really are. While people you encounter in life may help you discover who you are or who you are not, it can take a lifetime of experiences and personal reflection to learn on your own. At 62 years of age, I think I know who I am and who I am not. As it may pertain to the subject of fly fishing, I will tell you what I have learned. First, I'm a fly fisherman and have been since I was a small child. It is something that I feel I was destined to become. I'm a Pennsylvanian with deep roots here and have love for its forested hills, rivers, and streams. I'm a husband, father, brother, and friend to people I love dearly. I'm a scientist, a geologist, and have devoted my career to protecting the environment. I am also a gardener, a birder, a hiker, a collector of rocks, an amateur entomologist, illustrator of trout, a fly tyer, and a writer. By this stage in my life, I certainly know and accept who I am not. Although some of my work has been published, I'm not known as a fly fishing writer. I took a turn away from that path decades ago. I'm not rich, although I'm not poor either. I'm not well traveled, having spent most of my fly fishing life in Pennsylvania. I would not consider myself an artist. However, I have illustrated a few trout in my years. Many people have fly fished far more than me, caught more trout than me, caught bigger trout than me, and know more about the sport than me. Many people know more about Penn's Creek than me. Of that, I have no doubt whatsoever. But I can guess and say with some degree of certainty that few have so meticulously and consistently recorded their own fly fishing history. With the progress of time also comes loss, and we are losing plenty these days, especially the immense, incalculable loss of some of our fly fishing founding fathers. As I go forward, I will honor the greats as well as those friends, family, mentors, and old-timers who went before me by telling their stories and mine, and I will try to do so with the humility of someone who understands how incredibly blessed and lucky I've been. I will try to reflect how fly fishing for trout can reveal mysteries which are at once mundane and ethereal, earthly and heavenly, ancient and newly born, timeless and ephemeral, experienced by a few and possessed by no one. I know I'll soon be gone, going the way of the old-timers, destined to become another ghost, walking along the stream. Memories are also destined to be lost in the vapors of time, but for one mortal soul with a hand and a pen, some paper and a will, they might be preserved. I have been a seeker all my life, but now is not the time to squander what I have found. I choose to share. The past is a narrowing tunnel closing at one end. Collapse is inevitable. I'm racing out the other end, carrying a bundle of memories. I will cast them out into the light.